Hello, tiny artists. My name is Miss Erin and I'm from Makers, and I am so excited that you're here creating with me today. Now, I know you must have gone to the library. Hopefully you saw Miss Peggy or Miss Natalie. I think the children's room might be opening up again soon. But you got your November kit. Now this one I am so excited about. This is such a cool collage owl. There are tons of fun materials and decorations. So many that by the end I was like, Miss Erin, no more. You can't give them any more. They have enough. Okay, so owls, I always start to think about owls a little bit more this time of year. And I'm not sure if it's because the leaves start falling and maybe I can see the tree branches a little bit more, or if it's because the nights are getting longer. But owls are sort of always something that start to pop up around this time. And so here's the owl we'll be making today. Now, as always, there are so many great books about owls. We also have the Audubon Society right next door, and they are an incredible resource. They usually even have owls at the Audubon that they're nursing back to health. The Audubon is the place that taught me that owls actually do not spin their heads all the way around, but that they can turn them super far to the left and then super far to the right, but not all the way around. Now, some fun books that you might want to check out. A really nice book that I like that has really beautiful illustrations. I believe it has a Caldecott Award, is The Owl Moon by Jane Yolen. Another one that is also by Jane Yolen, but is really fun and funny, is called A Bear Sat on My Porch Today. Now, the owl isn't exactly the main character, but it is a character in the book. It's kind of fun. And then a series that my daughter has been loving lately is Owl Diaries. That one's by Rebecca Elliott, and it's a series, so they have tons of these books. It's sort of a graphic novel. So those are some great choices if you're looking to incorporate some books into your project today. Now, before we get started, you'll want to make sure that you set yourself up for success. So cover your surface with newspapers or an old paper towel. An old paper towel. I don't think a paper towel did the trick. Cover your surface with newspapers or an old tablecloth, something that you don't mind getting messy. And then we'll need a few extra supplies today. You need Elmer's glue. You'll need a pair of scissors, if you have a paintbrush, and a paper plate. Those will all be really useful. Okay, now I'm gonna flip my camera down and let's get right to work. Here we are all set up. I have the bag of decorations. We have the washable paint. Here are some very floaty feathers. This funny contraption we'll be using to make prints. Here's an extra piece of bubble wrap if you need to replace the top. And then these paper pieces, I'm just going to show you what I was thinking or what I was envisioning as I was creating this project. This does not mean it's how you have to use them. So I was kind of thinking these pieces would be added feather pieces, and then these ones could come together for the eyeballs. Now you will also need a paper plate, or depending on the age of your child, if you have just an old piece of cardboard, you could use that too. We'll be pouring some paint in it and using it to paint around. Sometimes the edges are best to keep the paint in, but like I said, it depends on the age of your child. You'll need a pair of scissors. We'll be doing a lot of cutting, and you'll need a paintbrush. Now, if you have two with different size tips, you might want to try that, but totally not necessary. And then you'll also need a bit of glue. To get started, I'm gonna set up my workspace so I have a little bit of room to move around. So I'm gonna move my floaty feathers over here, and I'm going to move my decorations. I'm gonna move my paper pieces. The first thing we'll be using is our paint. Now, you probably noticed your wings have these brackets in them, keeping them into your owl. Let's go ahead and take those apart. So we have 3 pieces that we're working with. And you can either take the brackets out or leave them in. It doesn't really matter. It's totally up to you. I've opened all 3 of my paints, and I'm just going to start painting. I've got all 3 pieces painted beautifully. Now I'm gonna choose one of my 3 colors to pour in this paint and use to print with. I think I'm gonna go with yellow first. So I'm just dumping it right here into my plate. Then I'm dipping the top in and going around to make some marks. Now you can sort of notice that once I get a little less paint on here, and actually the paint underneath is really helping to create all this texture. You may not even need the paint from your plate, but it just depends on how you're trying to make it look. Actually, I kind of like adding little bits like that. Now, while I have my paints out, I might want to think about if there's any of these pieces, any of my paper pieces, I'll just slide these down a minute. If there's any of these paper pieces that I might want to paint. So I think I'm going to leave these eyeballs and the glitter paper alone, but I'm going to play with the pink wings and this fun paper here for a minute. So let me slide this guy out of the way. I'm going to remove these. Now for these smaller pieces, this is where I think I'm going to pick up my paintbrush with a smaller tip, but a bigger paintbrush or whatever you have is totally fine. And then you can just start to make some fun details. I'm grabbing my bag of supplies. Oh my gosh, all these decorations are so much fun. In this bag of goodies, I have some flowers. Now these are awesome because the flower petals are sort of a bit of a feather shape. So we can cut these flower petals off or separate them and then use them all around our owl like feathers. So we have pink and orange. We have this really fun bag here of textures. There's 3 different kinds in here. Glitter, of course. Some more flower petals. I have some beads and some sequins. Ooh, we have some tulle. Now this is a really interesting material because when you open it all the way up, you can hardly tell that it's pink, but when it's folded or layered, you can definitely start to see the color come apart. This is another material I was thinking you would probably be cutting into different shapes. So I'm gonna set it over here with my flowers, the pieces that I'm cutting. I'll pull the rest of this out. Okay, so I have some flower petals I'll put right over here. I have some yarn. This will also be cutting, so I'll set this over here. We have some tissue paper. Now listen, tissue paper sometimes gets a bad rap, but this is a really fun material to use. Tissue paper is really cool because you can rip it, you can crinkle it, you could keep it flat in a square. And you know what, even if you don't end up using this for your owl, you should save it because it's special bleeding tissue paper. And that means if you use paper and water, you can paint with it. So let's see, I'll put my tissue paper over here. We have this beautiful golden glittery piece of foam. And then these 2 pieces here. This foam is adhesive. That means it sticks on the back. This one does not. Put this over here with my supplies that I thought I was going to be cutting. And then I think I'll go ahead and bring my eyeballs back over here and also bring my other feathers so I don't forget that I have all of these pieces to sort of collage onto my owl. Now, before I begin, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how to use some of these tools or some of these materials. Now, like I was saying, you can kind of see it, this flower shape, the petal shape makes really fun feathers. Now, when you're using these decorations, you definitely want to add a bit of glue. So here we are, some fun feather shapes. Now, these ones were already cut, so I don't have to cut them. But these guys, these will need to be cut. One of the other materials we may want to cut into smaller pieces is this yarn here. Now, when I'm making shapes or cutting out foam, I have a couple tricks I'd like to share with you. One is sometimes, depending on what kind of shape I'm making, I'll draw it on the back so that when I'm cutting, I have lines to guide me. So I think I'm gonna make just these feather shapes, which if you've done a project with me before, I think we've talked about the football shape. So here I'm just gonna draw a couple feather shapes on the back of it. And then my other trick when I'm cutting is instead of trying to move my hand and my scissors all around, I'll use my other hand to kind of guide the paper, and I'll try to keep my scissors in one place. So I sort of just turn, my scissors are staying still, but this hand is kind of moving my paper around. It's a little tricky, it takes practice. So my scissors are staying straight and I'm just moving it with my hand. And then we have some golden pieces, some golden feathers. Now this, I'm gonna use the same technique as I did with the glittery foam. I'll draw my shapes on the back. I'm sticking with a feather shape, but I bet you have a lot of other shapes in mind that you might be doing on yours. Now this tool, I think I'm gonna use for layers on my wings. So I'm just gonna cut out smaller pieces. The tool, if you kind of fold, because it's very thin, depending on how big you want and how many pieces you want, you can fold it a couple times and then cut it. Now that I've taken all my materials out and cut a lot of different shapes, I think I'm ready to start decorating. Now don't forget, most of these decorations will need Elmer's glue to stick. Some of them will stick to the paint, but they're a little bit heavier, so I suggest reinforcing it with a bit of Elmer's glue. And let's get started. When we're using our glitter, I really like to just cut off a triangle shape on the corner of it. That way we have a little opening, but not the entire packet. And then we can just kind of sprinkle it on. This, I really recommend that you, when you open it, that you just pour a little bit into your hands at a time. I may have forgotten to mention the beak, so definitely don't forget your beak. Now this, I'm gonna try to cut. I'm turning it into the football shape again. Or sort of, maybe just a little point at least. Ta-da! And now you have this incredibly cool collaged owl. I hope you had fun. I'm so thankful that you came to create with me today, and I hope I get to see you sometime soon. Bye.